The following video contains a fictional narrative created solely for storytelling and entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or real events, is purely coincidental. This work, including all audio, text, related content, is the sole property of the author and is fully protected under copyright law. No part of this material may be copied, reproduced, or used in any form without the author's express written permission. Now, let's continue to the finale of Secrets of a First Lady. It was the Saturday before church tomorrow morning. Genesis was still tying up loose ends on how to effectively handle Malcolm and his indiscretions. Right after her meeting with Vivian a few days ago, Genesis called her sister Harmony to make sure that Harmony was ready for tomorrow. Once Genesis was satisfied that Harmony had a solid grasp on what she needed for her to do, Genesis moved forward with her plans to address Malcolm today. On the information that she had uncovered from the detective, she had made sure that Petra and the other staff and her sons were not in the house. She had sent Malcolm a text message asking him to meet her in their library that afternoon. While she waited, she poured herself a glass of red wine and began to drink it slowly. She sat at the desk and looked at a picture of her and Malcolm on their wedding day 15 years earlier, which hung on the wall. She remembered that day as if it were yesterday. At that time, she was happy and eagerly looking forward to a beautiful future with Malcolm. Malcolm also looked very happy in the picture. Her wedding dress and veil were beautiful, and Malcolm looked very handsome in his tuxedo. They had over 300 guests at their wedding. Their wedding was the talk of the city. Grant had not yet been born, but Jean was 4 years old at the time. Malcolm had accepted Jean as his own son from the beginning since Jean's father was not in the picture. Genesis had told Malcolm that Jean's father, Gary, had passed away when Jean was born. The truth, however, was that Gary was in prison serving a life sentence. Jean had never met or knew anything about his biological father, and Genesis wanted to keep it that way. She had maintained no contact with Gary or his family. Malcolm did not even know that Genesis' own mother had been incarcerated. There were many parts of Genesis's life before Malcolm that she wanted kept hidden. She had worked too hard to get where she was today to have it all torn down and handed over to a thirsty heifer. That tramp and her brat have another thing coming if they think they are going to take everything I have worked for, she muttered out loud. She continued to sip her wine and she began to massage her temples. Moments later, Malcolm came into the library. "Genesis, why did you want to see me?" he asked. "Would you like a glass of wine?" she asked him instead of answering his question. "No," he said. He appeared annoyed. She walked up to him seductively and pressed her body against his. He did not move initially, so she pulled his face into hers and began to French kiss him. They often kissed this way in their early days together. They used to have a passion that was magnetic. They used to have a strong physical chemistry that was powerful and unmistakable. She wanted to remind him of what he would be missing if he ever left her. She could tell that he had let his guard down and divulged into her embrace. She had to admit that this felt good to her too, but she had to remind herself of the reality of their current situation. She quickly pulled back from their kiss and pulled herself together. She took another sip of wine. She held up an empty glass toward him. "Want some?" she asked him, indicating that she would pour him a glass of wine if he wanted some. However, the way he was looking at her indicated that his mind was on something else. It indicated that he wanted something much more than a glass of red wine. She cleared her throat and tapped her finger on the bottle of wine. Malcolm finally realized what she meant. He stammered at first, but pulled it together. "Sure, why not?" he said while unbuttoning the top of his shirt. She leaned back against the desk and watched him drink. "Yes, that's good wine," he said, and then gave her a somewhat puzzled look. "What did you want to see me about?" he asked curiously. "Do you still plan on divorcing me?" she asked. He looked at her seriously for a moment. "Genesis," he said, "you know that we have not been right for a long time. Our kiss just now meant nothing to you?" she replied. He put his face in his hand before looking back up. "The kiss was great," he admitted, "but it doesn't change anything." She figured that he would say something along those lines. She slowly walked over to the desk and pulled out the folder which contained the photos of Malcolm, Sandra Dennis, and little Destiny Dennis. She took the folder and threw it at his chest. "Are they why it doesn't change anything?" she said, raising her voice many decibels. Malcolm had a look of confusion and bewilderment on his face as he put down his wine glass and began to pick up the photos. As he looked at each photo haphazardly scattered across the floor, his face changed to anger. "You had me followed?" he demanded. "I don't believe this." "Well, you better believe it. Genesis continued to yell. She continued on her rant about Sandra and her little brat. She told him that she was not going to let them come in and steal everything from her and her children. "You are pathetic," Malcolm laughed sarcastically. "And you are a pitiful excuse for a man," Genesis retorted. They continued to hurl insults at one another. Many of their insults hit below the belt. Genesis had to admit that some of the things Malcolm said to her in this moment stung, but she was going to continue to put on a brave face, as if it did not bother her one bit. She was on the warpath, and all she saw in her tunnel vision of rage was her current target, Malcolm. "I'm still leaving you," Malcolm threatened. He began to tear up the photos. He should have known that doing this was a waste of time because Genesis had backups. She laughed out loud. "Nice try," she said. "There's more where that came from." "What kind of stunt are you trying to pull?" he demanded. "This is no stunt, lover boy," she laughed sarcastically. "You had a whole baby on me." What Malcolm did not know was that Genesis had gotten pregnant last year, but it was not by Malcolm. When she had found out that she was pregnant, she tried to seduce Malcolm to pass the baby off as his. However, her attempt to do so did not work. Malcolm had not touched her in years. She knew that the baby was Deacon Goen's child, but she never told him. Instead, she lost the baby shortly after finding out about the pregnancy. She was sad about it, but also felt that this had spared her from a mountain of chaos and would have dismantled everything that she had built. Malcolm might have been the face of their church. She was the brains behind the scenes. Now knowing that Malcolm had had another child, a little girl at that, with another woman, was too much for Genesis. She knew she was a hypocrite, but she had not been caught like he had. Malcolm sat down in one of the chairs and looked off at nothing in particular. He appeared to be in a daze. He had been sloppy with his secret, and he knew that it had caught up with him. "This could ruin me," he muttered out loud. After taking another sip of wine, Genesis just stared at him. "Is this why Vivian resigned so suddenly?" he asked, as if suddenly coming to a realization. Genesis laughed sharply. She kept laughing. She was not laughing from humor, but from the look on his face. "Bingo! You got it!" she said, suddenly no longer laughing. "What did you say to her?" he asked. "Oh, don't you worry about that," she said. "Vivian is the least of your worries." "What did you do to Sandy and Dee Dee?" he demanded. She was taken aback about his emotions when he mentioned their names. She was also offended because she could see the love in his eyes when he asked the question. She had not seen that look in his eyes toward her in years, and she had not seen him refer to her sons in the way that he had just spoken about little Dee Dee. She had to admit that this made her jealous and even angrier because she was not going to allow them to waltz in and steal what she had built from either her or her sons. "I have not communicated with either of them," she said bitterly. He appeared to relax, but she could still see the suspicion in his eyes. "You are going to get rid of her and her brat," she said threateningly. He stood up and came around the desk to face her. She could clearly see that he was angry, but she was not easily intimidated. "And if I don't," he said, "I will call an emergency meeting with the board members," she threatened. "And I will tell them about your extracurricular activities, which resulted in the birth of a child." He glared at her, as if he could not stand her. He looked at her as if he was looking at an enemy. He came and lowered his face toward hers. He pointed his finger at her chest before he spoke. "Do you think I'm going to allow you to rip away everything that I have built?" he said. "You would not have had any of this if it were not for me," she countered. They continued hurling insults at one another. They each blamed the other one for their respective miseries. Genesis grabbed objects around the library and threw them at him. He was able to duck and avoid being hit by the flying objects. "You are going to have your tramp and her brat leave town," Genesis said. After pulling herself together, she was trying to give Malcolm the chance to clean this up so that they could move on with their lives. "Pay her off to leave town," Genesis demanded. Malcolm cringed at first. She could see his jaw tighten. She could see the vein on his forehead become more prominent. She could not believe how resistant he was to her demands. Seeing him react this way made her even angrier. He continued to say nothing. He just quietly looked off into space as if he were in deep thought. "You're telling me that I cannot see my little girl anymore?" He finally spoke. Genesis just stared at him. The words that were coming to her mind at that moment were extremely unpleasant. She wanted to wring his neck for even asking her a question like that. He went out and fathered a whole baby on her. He kept a relationship with the child's mother and had no intention of her finding out. So, whether he realized it or not, she held all of the cards at this moment. In her mind, he had no more hands to play. She clearly saw his reluctance and instinctively knew that he was going to try to resist her demand on this issue. "If you do not take care of this as I have asked you to," she continued, "I will call an emergency meeting with the church board and provide them with everything I know." There was a long silence. As she watched the change in Malcolm's eyes, she knew that she had touched a nerve now. His precious Sandy, and DD did not matter more to him than his position at the church, obviously. She knew that he loved the title, the power, the lifestyle, and the money that being the senior pastor of a large megachurch afforded him. She knew he was not willing to sacrifice his seemingly stellar reputation within their community and circles of influence for this woman and her child. Genesis knew that the information that she held was like lit dynamite that would surely blow up his whole world. Not to mention, he would have to provide her alimony payments and pay for child support. He was cooked. He knew it, and she knew it. "Well," she said, folding her arms across her chest and tapping her foot. "I will take care of it," he said after a long sigh. He clenched his fists and put them inside of his pockets. "I want this taken care of before church service tomorrow," she said. She walked toward the door to leave, but stopped. She turned around and gave him a half smile. "I hired Harmony to take Vivian's place," she said. "If you need any administrative help, she will be at the church bright and early tomorrow." He did not look at her. She hesitated again before leaving the library. She looked around at the mess they had made. It was a chaotic scene. It was very indicative of where their marriage was at the moment. "I will have Petra to clean up this mess," she said, and this time she left the room. The next morning, after Ezra had dropped her off at the church, Genesis strolled into the building toward her office. This time, when she passed her secretary's desk, her sister Harmony was sitting there. Harmony was a very beautiful woman. She did not wear very much makeup, and she did not care to wear flashy designer clothes. She had a more simple and understated style. "Good morning," Harmony greeted her. "Good morning," Genesis replied. Genesis did not smell any coffee brewing. That was the one thing that she missed about Vivian. Vivian made the best coffee. "Could you brew a pot of coffee and bring a cup to my office?" Genesis asked. "Of course," Harmony said, and quickly got up to go brew some coffee. Genesis had not yet let everyone know that Harmony was her sister. She was not going to volunteer the information, but if anyone found out, she would not deny it either. She wanted to keep the church folks out of her business as much as possible. She went to her office and sat down behind her desk. While she went through the paperwork on her desk, Harmony came in with a cup of coffee and placed it on her desk. "I wasn't sure if you wanted cream or sugar," Harmony said while placing a couple of piles of sugar and creamer next to the mug. "I like French vanilla almond milk creamer in my coffee," Genesis said. "I did see that in the refrigerator," Harmony said. "I will go and bring it back." "No need," Genesis said. She was ready for Harmony to leave. "Just keep it in mind for future reference. Do you need anything else?" Harmony asked. "I will let you know," Genesis said, and then waved Harmony away with her hand. "Please close the door on your way out." Harmony closed the door behind her as she left Genesis's office. Moments later, Genesis heard a knock at the door. "Come in," she said, and when she saw Deacon Goins enter the room, her heart fluttered. She had been avoiding his calls and text messages. She knew that she would have to see him again, but so much had happened in her home life. She just did not have the capacity to deal with him too. Though she cared for him, she had to prioritize and take care of things on the home front. She could see the hurt in his eyes, but he tried very hard to hide it. She got up from her desk and walked over to stand in front of him. He took both of her hands into his and stared into her eyes intensely. She almost forgot where she was as their faces moved closer and closer to each other's. She then heard someone clearing their throat behind them. This startled her, and she tried to be smooth and recover herself. Deacon Goins never turned around to face the person standing in the doorway. He clearly was not as good as she was at hiding her emotions. She looked behind Deacon Goins only to see Harmony standing there. The look on Harmony's face showed her that she saw something between Genesis and the deacon that made her uncomfortable, but Harmony tried to hide it. "Is there something you need?" Genesis asked. Her voice was annoyed. She may have been good at hiding her facial expression, but her voice sure gave her emotions away. "I wanted to see if you needed anything before you went to service," Harmony said. This time she looked a little more uncomfortable. "I will let you know if I need anything," Genesis said in a clippy tone. She started to wonder if hiring Harmony was the best idea, because the last thing that she needed was for her sister to get involved in her personal business. "Are you ready, First Lady?" Deacon Goins asked, and cuffed his elbow for her to place her hand into it. They walked out of her office and toward the entrance to the sanctuary. Once she was seated and later joined by her sons, Malcolm came to the pulpit and gave a brief greeting to the church. She could tell he was pushing himself to act normal. She could tell that the congregation was none the wiser about their personal situation. After the church announcements and the musical selections by the choir, Malcolm re-entered the stage. He began to give his message for the day. As he continued to give his message, she could see his usual charisma return. Then, during the middle of his message, she saw him suddenly stop. He was looking out into the crowd, and whatever, or whoever it was he saw, made his face and thoughts become blank. There was a very uncomfortable silence, and the congregation noticed it also. She looked in the direction that he was looking at out into the crowd and saw that walking halfway up one of the middle aisles was Sandra Dennis holding her daughter Destiny. She had a look on her face as if she was out for blood. Genesis saw everything that she built was suddenly in jeopardy. If this woman exposed their secret, their whole world would be turned upside down. She looked back at her sons, and doing so gave her a new resolve. She was going to take care of this. This concludes the Secrets of a First Lady series. Thank you for checking out Purple Rose Studio. We hope you were entertained and enjoyed the video. Please take a moment to like, share, subscribe, and leave your feedback. Be sure to turn on your notifications so you won't miss any of our amazing videos.